Hi, this is Wing. In this video, I would like to provide some information or help address some of the home owners who has got existing housing loan in the bank. Now, as you're aware, our Prime Minister just announced that in order to help everybody to cushion the impact due to COVID-19, he has announced several incentives. And one of the incentives that he has announced is the incentive that will provide the flexibility for housing owners to defer their monthly installment for 6 months. My intention today is to keep it as simple as possible and as layman as possible so that everybody in a few minutes able to decide whether they should opt in or opt out. In order to decide whether to opt in or opt out is very simple. Now, the first question is, are you impacted by COVID-19 financially? Now, the answer if it is yes, if you are impacted financially due to COVID-19, then just opt in. Defer your monthly installment by 6 months. Alright, it's very simple. What if you are not impacted by this COVID-19 financially? Then there is two other questions that you need to ask yourself. The first question is, do you like to borrow or owe the bank money? Now, if you do, then you opt in or like to borrow from the bank, then you just opt in the deferment whereby you deferred the next 6 months of your monthly installment. Now, if you don't like to owe the bank money or you don't like to borrow from the bank, then you just opt out and continue to pay the monthly installment for the next 6 months. The simple consideration whether you should opt in or opt out. Now, for those who is more interested or wanted to find out a little bit more from a technical perspective, the second half of the video, I would provide a little bit more details to show you some of the frequently asked questions. Now, before I go into that, let's assuming currently you have got a housing loan balance of 500,000, all right? Your interest rate is at 4% and your tenure is still 35 years. So what happened is that you are paying installment of 2,213 ringgit and 87 cents per month. That is what you have been paying all this while. Now, if you choose to opt in the deferment of the monthly installment, so what happened is that for the next 6 months, you don't have to pay your monthly installment for your housing loan. But what happened is that the interest which the bank charged to you on the monthly basis for the next 6 months will still be calculated and it will be added up into your outstanding balance amount. Now, in the market today, there is two terms. Some banks are using a non-compounding interest and some banks are using a compounding interest. So I will show you a basic calculation, the difference between the non-compounded and also the compounded. So first, I start with non-compounded. Now, if you look at this table, what happens for the next 6 months is the banks, assuming 500,000 loan, 4% interest per annum. So for each month, from month 1 to month 6, the bank will be charging you 1,666 ringgit and 67 cents. Now, this is consistent for the next 6 months if your interest is not compounded. Now, the difference between not compounded and compounded is if the interest is compounded, then from month 1 to month 6, you can see from the table, the interest will slightly increase from the first month 1,666 to the month 6 of 1,694 and 63 cents. Now, this is the case when the interest is compounded. So if you add up all the interest, if the interest is not compounded, you will accumulate an interest of 10,000 ringgit, which will be added to your principal. And if your interest is compounded, the total interest accumulated for that 6 months will be 10,083 ringgit and 70 cents. Also, this amount will be added to the principal amount of your loan. So what happens when it comes the 7th month or the deferment period ended? So as announced by most of the banks, they will not prolong your tenure of your housing loan. So what happens is that if you decide to opt in for this deferment, the monthly installment that you need to pay back to the bank from month 7 onwards will increase slightly due to the extra interest that has been added to your principal. So if you go back to the table, you can see that before the COVID-19 or before the financial crisis, you are paying 2,213 ringgit and 87 cents per month. So on the month 7 onwards, for those interests not compounded, your monthly installment will become 2,258 ringgit and 15 cents. So there is an increment of about 45 ringgit if your interest is not compounded. But if your interest is compounded, your monthly installment will be 2,258 and 52 cents. There will be also a similar amount of increment of about 45 ringgit. Your monthly installment on the month 7 onwards will be slightly higher than your previous installment. However, if you compare the non-compounded and compounded, you can see for a 500,000 loan, the monthly installment is negligible, and also the total interest, the difference between compounded and non-compounded is also not significant. Alright, I hope my today's video simplifies some of the questions, some of the concerns, or some of the announcement or incentive by our Prime Minister to whether to defer or not to defer your housing loan installment. A disclaimer here is that this is what I understand from the announcement and based on the various reports and articles that I read regarding this deferment. So use this as an extra pointers or notes in part of your consideration, whether you want to opt in or opt out. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.